Hello everyone and welcome to another Endgame episode with Coach B and Master Chess. This is the third and last video in which I'm going to cover bishops of opposite colors where the side with the advantage has two connected passed pawns. If you haven't seen my first two videos in this series, I encourage you to watch those videos first to fully comprehend this lesson. In the first video, we looked at the positions that included the connected passed pawns being on the 6th rank. In the second video, we looked at the pawns being on the 5th rank or behind. In the third video, we will look at the positions that are the most difficult to be stopped, even if the pawns have never moved. That includes the pawns being on the E and F files or the C and D files. If the defense setup has not been achieved right from the beginning, where the defending king is in front of the pawns and his bishop also in front of the pawns attacks one of the pawns, preventing the other one from marching as he's going to be able to capture it, then those pawns cannot be stopped anymore with correct play. And the reason for that is that once the pawns reach the f4 and e5 squares, it blocks the main diagonal, leaving the defending bishop with very few squares to maneuver. And eventually, he's going to get trapped, as we will see in this video. The defense setup with the pawns on the 4th rank will need to have the king on f6 in front of the pawns and the bishop on the b8 to e5 diagonal, being able to stop the push on e5 by sacrificing the bishop, reaching a draw. Since the pawns have never moved and they can move 2 squares at the beginning, this setup cannot be achieved. So coming back from the very beginning, you're going to see that even though white's pawns have never moved, black will not be able to reach a desired defense setup. Here, with white to play, white needs to move the pawn to f4, after something like bishop to f8, pawn to e4, taking control of the 4th rank. And here, black will need 2 tempi to set up the defense setup. His king needs to be on f6 and his bishop needs to be on the b8 to e5 diagonal. However, he only has one move. If he tries bishop to d6, taking control of that diagonal, well here, white will move the pawn to e5 right away. The bishop will now have to retreat, let's say bishop to c7, and now bishop to c4 check, attacking the king. And here, the king cannot take control of f6 as the pawn on e5 attacks that square. So after something like king to e7, king to f3, bishop to b8, king to e4, bishop to c7, pawn to f5, and now the pawns have reached the 5th rank, where the bishop would need to be on the h8 to e5 diagonal to be able to get a draw. However, his bishop is on the wrong diagonal, so after something like bishop to b8, after pawn to f6, black is totally lost. After something like king to e8, pawn to e6, the pawns have reached the 6th rank with the winning endgame. And I'm just going to fast forward through the moves to see the winning continuation. And white wins the game. Coming back from the beginning, we saw that after f4, bishop to f8, and pawn to e4, we looked at bishop to d6, trying to reach the correct diagonal for a defense setup with the pawns on the 4th rank, and that didn't work. Moving the king to f6 also won't work, as the pawn will simply march to e5, attacking the king, which will have to retreat. So the only other try that black has is maybe moving the king to e7. After king to e7, white will continue with bishop to c4. After bishop to g7, pawn to e5, blocking the diagonal of the bishop, limiting his moves. After something like bishop to h6, bishop to b3, an excellent move, setting black into zugzwang. No matter what he moves, he's going to lose this game. The only option that he has is retreating the bishop to g7 or moving the king to f8. If he moves the king to f8, white will respond with pawn to f5, getting his pawns on the 5th rank. After bishop to g7, pawn to f6, bishop to h8, king to f5, and from here, black is totally lost. And I'm just going to fast forward to the winning continuation. Here, black cannot capture the pawn as white will simply capture back. And if he moves the king to f8, after pawn to e7, king to e8, bishop to a4 check, black is totally lost. Coming back, after bishop to b3, we looked at moving the king to f8. If black tries bishop to g7 instead, here white will continue with king to g5. After bishop to h8, king to g6. King to f8, king to h7, bishop to g8, and bishop to c4. Again, another zugzwang position. If black moves the bishop to h8, white will simply capture the bishop with the winning endgame. And if black captures the pawn on e5, the f-pawn will capture back and black is totally lost. So as we've seen in this video, even if you reach a bishop of opposite color endgame, which is known for many drawing possibilities, if the pawns are connected, a defense setup is not that easy to be achieved, or sometimes even impossible with correct play. So I encourage you to practice these positions against the computer on my website. All you have to do is go to my website, masterchess.com, and then you can click on Endgame versus Computer, go to Opposite Color Bishops. This position you'll find there under the Advanced tab, or you could simply play against the computer. And you'll see on the website there's a lot of other positions that you could practice to see if you've mastered the content. Thank you and have a great day.